We move on to Romuald Uzabumwana, please. The role of religion in helping genocide survivors in Rwanda cope with the trauma of sexual violence.
My research was about the role of religion in helping genocide survivors to cope with the traumatic experience of sexual violence in Rwanda. Warning, given the content of this experience, if somebody experiences some distress, please look for help. The context of my research was, as I said, in Rwanda, where in 1994 there was a genocide against the Tutsi, during which almost 1 million people have been killed. During genocide, also, sexual violence was used as the means, as the weapon to humiliate, to destroy, especially Tutsi communities. And according to the UN publication, almost 250,000 girls and women from Rwanda have been raped. After the genocide, we see in Rwanda a proliferation of religious practices, people going to the churches, different churches, and my research was about how does this help survivors of genocide and rape to cope with the traumatic experience. This was my problem statement. How does it help to cope with this problem? Now, the objectives of my research were 3 objectives. First, to analyze critically the impact of religious coping. Second, to see how people they use religion to cope with the sexual violence, and also to suggest some recommendation so that we can assist in better way the victims and survivors. The key concept of my research were 3. Armed conflict and genocide as the context of high risk of abuse and violence, especially sexual violence. Sexual violence, its all definitions, impact, consequences in different parts of the world, and religious coping, because my research was in the field of psychology of religion and spirituality. So how does faith, religion, and spirituality help people to cope with their traumatic experience, in a special way, the sexual violence? Methodology, I used the qualitative research with a small number of participants, which helps me to understand their lived experience of sexual violence. So data were collected through a semi-structured interview, and were carried on both sides, on site but also online. To analyze the collected data, I used what is called the interpretative phenomenological analysis, which helps you to explore the meaning people they give to their own experience. In this case, for sexual violence, how people they use religion to cope with the consequences of sexual violence. Participant. I had 7 participants, all of them women, who have experienced a traumatic experience of sexual violence. 3 of them, they had children born of rape. 5 Catholics, 1 Muslim, and 1 Protestant. And others, one of them, she was threatened to be raped the day before, and the soldiers, they told her that after being raped, they will open the womb and take the child of the Tutsi community and kill that child. So this woman, she participated. 2 of them, they had HIV infection as the consequence of sexual violence. Summary of my findings. We had lived experience of sexual violence, As I said, the 6 participants, they were all of them raped except one, the 7th one. 2 correspondents have been raped using a sharpened object, including guns. 1 was threatened to be raped, as I said. And 3, they were living with the children born of rape. And because of rape, as I said, 2 were infected with the HIV. Consequences, we had consequences on different levels. On physical level, as you can see, unwanted pregnancy, HIV infection, gynecological complication. On psychological level, there was a rejection from the community. On psychological level, there was a blaming, you feel self-blaming and also shame and traumatic PTSD. And on spiritual level, there was anger towards God and the church. God did not protect, because I remember in one day in my office, a woman coming and said, Father Romuald, what have we done to God so that my family was killed? And I went through this experience of sexual violence. Now, to overcome the consequences of sexual violence, these women used a different kind of what we call coping resources, including psychological accompaniment, economic resources, medical resources, psychological resources, but also religious resources. So this was the attention to the last one was my attention. All the 7, they used religious resources. Now, the analysis I made of their lived experience came out with 4 resources of positive religious coping. For example, individual prayer, praying in groups, religious beliefs, reading the sacred writings, religious songs, altruism, and others. And 3 religious resources of negative religious coping. For example, getting angry with God, denying God's existence, and abandoning the religious practices. What are the role they attributed to the religion in terms of coping resources? I came out with 8 positive roles attributed to the religion. For example, feeling protected, promoting forgiveness, facilitating the process of healing, giving courage. As you can see, there are many positive outcomes thanks to the use of religion. I came out with the one ambiguous law when a woman said, what happened to me as rape is God's plan. How come God accepted that an innocent woman can be raped? I came out also with the one negative role. I remember one woman told me she was pregnant of a child of rape. She told me that she got angry with God, and she wanted to get angry with God so that God can kill her and the child and finish every story. But when she gave birth without any problems, so she changed from a negative coping mechanism to a positive coping mechanism. Recommendation made by some victims, survivors. So there was a 5 recommendation to care for the survivors, recommendation to care for the children born of rape, and also recommendation to the churches present in Rwanda. One important recommendation I want to say is that we should care for them in a special way. I came out also to conclude with my recommendation based on this research. These are the 6 recommendations. We need a pastoral program adapted to the victim because of their particular needs. We need also to set new structures of psychospiritual accompaniment for survivors. The benefit of religious practices are relevant coping resources for survivors because in the country where we don't have enough psychologists to help people, the survivors, so people, they go to the priest for accompaniment. We need also to discern the effectiveness of religious coping. It's not enough to go to the church or to pray, but how does it help people? I suggest also a collaboration between what I call religion professionals, priests, seminarians, pastors, and also the health professionals, because they can collaborate together to help the survivors. And also a multidisciplinary training for religion and mental health for professionals. I conclude saying that according to my research, majority of the participants, they have benefited a lot from the religious coping. But we have to be careful. We need criteria to discern the effectiveness, because religion can function as a double-edged sword. It can heal, it can also kill if you don't pay attention. Thank you for your attention.